There is much to learn about sewing thread, so I'm just going to give you a brief overview in order that you might try some different things and get really great results. So the first thing to explain to you is there are lots of different thicknesses of thread. And with thread, the higher the number, the finer the thread. It's actually the opposite way round to sewing machine needles, which is not helpful, is it? But that's how it goes. So a 100 weight thread is very fine, a 40 weight thread is thicker, a 10 weight thread is much thicker, more like an embroidery thread. Okay, so the higher the number, the finer the thread. But thread also comes in many different types of fibre. So there is cotton thread, there's polyester thread, there's rayon thread, there's silk thread, and many other things that we tend not to use in our domestic sewing. So you're making a quilt top, you probably will be using cotton fabrics, and people might tell you that you must use cotton thread to sew those fabrics together. Well, you can if you like, but I personally rarely use cotton threads. I trained as a clothing designer, I worked in the British clothing industry. We used polyester thread for everything, every type of fabric, every type of construction, knits, wovens, the whole bit. Cotton thread is a natural fibre. It grows on a bush, and the cotton fibre is actually the exploded seed pod, and those individual little fibres are called staple lengths. They are short lengths that are twisted together to make our sewing thread and the thread that goes to making fabrics. So the short lengths mean that you get lint, and often you have all seen this, or lots of you have seen it, an inferior quality cotton thread. It will be very whiskery and have little lumpy bits in it, not be even, and I don't like the linty quality of cotton thread. But the main reason I don't like it, and this is a 60 cotton thread, is that it is very inelastic. Okay, it has little elasticity to it, and so it tends to sit almost string-like in a hard line, top and bottom, in your sewing machine, because the lack of elasticity doesn't allow itself to be kind of pulled into the middle of the two layers of fabric that you are sewing together. Okay, and it's not particularly strong, breaking that very easily. Okay, so if I want a strongish thread, I need to go up in terms of thickness to have strength. And I find when I'm piecing, when I'm doing intricate piecing, making blocks and things, the thicker the thread is, the less well I'm able to match, because thread creates bulk. So apart from a bit of tacking when I'm garment making, whoops, not that one, this one, I tend not to use cotton thread. So what do I use? Well, I really like polyester thread, and polyester thread has come a long way since it was first introduced. And if you are of a certain age, you will remember buying polyester thread and going to break it by wrapping it around your fingers, and it would just cut into your flesh practically. It was really hard, but it's come a long way, and there are many different weights of thread, and I tend to use polyester thread often. So I use it in all my garment making, and I use it in my quilt making and in piecing my quilt tops. Now, polyester thread is made from petroleum, and very long, very fine filaments are extruded and all twisted together, multiple filaments twisted together, so very long lengths, so not those short lengths. And if it has a really high twist to it, it's very elastic. Okay, so the elasticity is to your advantage, because it means that your thread will allow itself to be pulled in between the two layers. If there's any tension, the thread will stretch and not break, whereas cotton will break. It's totally lint free, so you don't get a build-up of lint. It just performs beautifully. So in the bottom of my sewing machine, I put Superior Threads bottom line 60 weight polyester. It is a bobbin thread. It is fabulous. It comes in a big range of colours. However, I don't put it in the top of my sewing machine often, because it does tend to shred a little bit. So in the top, I put a 100-weight silk, Superior Threads 100-weight silk. So if I'm yellow in the top, I'm yellow in the bobbin, even though it's a different thread. It performs like a dream. So the silk is a natural fibre. It's made from the cocoon of a particular silkworm. The actual cocoon has these incredibly fine filaments in the same way that the polyester does, so it doesn't have any lint. It has this stretch, but it just performs beautifully through the sewing machine. It doesn't shred or anything. So those two threads together, the polyester in the bottom, the silk in the top, give me the most fabulous quality of stitch without any bulk, and I'm able to get really, really, really fantastic matching, fantastic results. So that's what I'm using. But I'm just going to mention a couple of other threads just to give you a bit more information. So if you go into just a sewing shop and it's selling garment making fabrics, it's probably selling something like a polyester thread, something like Gutterman's Sew All. And it's a great thread, but I really see it as a garment making thread. And I use it for making garments, but I think it's too thick for piecing those small, delicate sections and units that we put together in our quilt making. So don't get a thick polyester thread. Another thread you might see is rayon thread, viscose thread, and it's kind of half man-made, half natural. It's made from wood pulp, so it comes from trees, okay? And so it has properties similar to cotton in that, you know, it's not so strong, it'll take heat, that kind of thing, but it is your weakest thread. It breaks very easily, so don't use it for piecing, don't use it for creating your quilt tops. It's too weak, it's not strong enough. And in quilt shops you may also see shiny polyester threads. This is a decorative embroidery style shiny polyester thread, and I don't use this type of thread for piecing. I do use it for machine quilting where I want a lovely decorative sheen to my line of stitching, but it's not appropriate for piecing. Too expensive, too attractive, too slippery, just not what you want. So think beyond cotton thread. Don't listen to the people who say you must do such and such a thing, that unless they can give you a really good reason for it, you absolutely don't have to do it. Experiment with different threads. Buy 1 or 2 reels of different things. You don't have to buy these great big cones, you get little ones. Try them out and see what works for you. But don't forget that you do need to match a fine thread with a fine needle. You don't want a really big heavy duty needle with these lovely fine threads. So next time you see some different threads that you haven't tried before, give them a go. You might be pleasantly surprised. If you've enjoyed that information and found it interesting, I teach a huge range of quilting classes through quiltersquestiontime.com, starting with a beginner quilters class that takes you through the entire process from start to finish, and Series 1 Quilters Question Time, the transformational series designed to transform your quilting and take your enjoyment and the results that you make to the next level. quiltersquestiontime.com.